Welcome to This Explainer. When we think about our goals, our big dreams, and the life we desperately want to build, we usually imagine that the obstacles standing in our way are external. We blame our circumstances, maybe a lack of resources, or just plain bad timing. But what if the ultimate barrier to your success isn't the outside world at all? What if that massive, imposing mountain blocking your path is actually you?
So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt just completely stuck? Like you were perfectly aware of exactly what you needed to do to move forward, and yet you just didn't do it? Maybe you procrastinated on a huge project, pushed away a genuinely healthy relationship, or somehow talked yourself right out of a great opportunity. We all do this. But I want you to consider something profound today. The absolute biggest obstacle in your life right now might actually be your own mind. All right, let's jump right into section 1. The mountain is you. Understanding the core of self-sabotage. Okay, let's dive into this because this concept completely shifts how we view our personal struggles. The mountain is really a metaphor. It represents all of those internal barriers preventing us from reaching our full potential. And the absolutely crucial point here is that people don't sabotage themselves because they're lazy, and they certainly don't do it because they're broken. Self-sabotage is actually your brain's misguided attempt at self-protection. It's like a shield. It usually stems from deep-rooted fears. We hear a lot about the fear of failure, but psychologically speaking, the fear of success is just as common. Why? Well, because success brings new responsibilities, unknown territory, and the human brain biologically craves the safety of the known. So when your subconscious recognizes a situation that caused pain in the past or senses unfamiliar success approaching, it just pulls the plug before you can get hurt. It is literally self-protection in disguise.
But how do we actually know we're doing it? Well, think about whether you're repeating the exact same mistakes over and over. Are you continually finding yourself in unhealthy relationships? Maybe it's chronic procrastination, constantly engaging in negative self-talk, or just blowing up over minor emotional triggers. I highly encourage you to grab a journal and write these patterns down. Why? Because awareness is always the very first step. You absolutely cannot change a habit if you don't even recognize it. By identifying these behaviors not as personal flaws, but as protective patterns, you create a real opportunity for change. Moving on to section 2, escaping the comfort zone. Why familiar doesn't mean healthy. And section 3, heal before you grow, the foundation of lasting transformation. It's incredibly easy to get lost in what we know. Our brains are biologically wired to prefer the familiar simply because it feels safe. But here's the thing, just because something is familiar doesn't mean it's actually good for you. This is exactly why people stay in toxic relationships or constantly repeat old, damaging patterns. To escape, we really have to internalize that true growth begins the second you step outside of that comfort zone. But there's a catch. You can't just force yourself out using sheer willpower alone. Trying to endlessly improve your life without addressing old emotional wounds, things like grief, fear, guilt, shame, and anger, is literally like trying to build a beautiful house on a broken foundation. We spend so much time and energy burying our feelings, but avoiding how you feel just gives those emotions absolute power over your subconscious actions. Real mastery, it comes from emotional intelligence. It comes from accepting those feelings, practicing daily mindfulness, and consciously regulating your stress. When you do the hard work of healing, you stop operating out of blind reaction and you start making infinitely better, clearer life decisions. All right, section 4, shifting your identity. Success is an identity before it becomes a result. Looking at the difference between asking, what do I want versus who do I need to become, brilliantly illustrates the exact mindset shift required here. This is where the magic really starts to happen because your identity essentially shapes your reality. As humans, we act according to the identity we believe we hold. If your internal monologue constantly says, I'm just not successful, or I'm a totally unlucky person, your actions are magnetically going to reinforce those exact beliefs. Usually, when we set goals, we ask, what do I want? But to truly stop self-sabotaging, you have to ask an entirely different question. Who do I need to become? Think about it like this. Don't ask how to run a marathon. Ask how to become a runner. You've got to focus on building the mindset, the habits, and the character of your future self. Because if you want to change your life, you have to change your identity first. And once your identity shifts, your habits will naturally follow suit. Which brings us to section 5. Action creates confidence. Stop waiting to feel ready. Now, what's really interesting about this is how profoundly simple the solution actually is. Imagine yourself standing at the bottom of a steep, intimidating set of stairs. Most of us just wait at the bottom, right? We wait for a sudden burst of motivation. We wait for total certainty, or actually, scratch that, we wait for perfect timing. But that is a massive trap. Waiting to feel ready is just another really sneaky form of self-sabotage. Confidence doesn't come before you do the hard thing. Confidence comes as a result of doing the hard thing. Progress comes from forward movement, not perfection. And you take those steps through small, consistent daily habits. Journaling, exercising, reading, meditation, keeping healthy routines. These aren't massive, earth-shattering actions, but transformation doesn't happen overnight. Every single time you lace up your shoes to exercise or sit down to journal, you are basically casting a vote for your new identity. These small actions, gradually, step by step, reshape your life. They provide the energetic momentum you need to just keep climbing your mountain. Finally, Section 6, the mountain becomes the path, transforming pain into purpose.
So, we've reached the summit of our explainer today. We've talked about identifying sabotage, doing the hard healing, and taking action. Now we arrive at the ultimate realization. The challenges, the setbacks, and the emotional wounds you faced, you don't need to run from them anymore. Your struggles can genuinely become your greatest strengths. This is the core takeaway of our entire journey together. Yes, the greatest obstacle to your success is your own subconscious. But by doing the work, by healing those emotional wounds, rewriting your limiting beliefs, and taking small daily actions, you use that very same mountain to build your resilience. You learn from it, you grow through it, and the mountain itself actually becomes the path forward. You become fully capable of achieving the life you want, simply by choosing to stop fighting yourself and starting to work with yourself. I want to leave you with this final thought, looking out from the summit of our discussion today. Imagine, really imagine how drastically your life would change if you permanently stopped fighting yourself. The view from the top is absolutely incredible, but you have to take the very first step to get there. So I'll ask you, what is the first step you're going to take today to start climbing your mountain? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now get out there and start your climb.